In this video, we're going to talk about how InDesign uses frames to define areas where either type or graphics will go. There are actually two kinds of frames. There's type frames for text, which we use the type tool for, and there's graphic frames for things like clip art, photos, and logos, which we use the rectangle frame tool here. Let's begin by talking about how you can use the type frame. Now for a type frame there are two options, and like in Photoshop you'll notice that there's a little down caret on the bottom right of the T from the type tool. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the caret, and you'll notice that I have both a type tool and a type on a path tool. This is something that you're going to want to experiment with, but let's begin with type tool. Now when I click on the type tool, I have this floating icon with a little tiny black triangle, and as I move my cursor over my margins, you will notice that the cursor changes from a white to a black triangle. When it's on the margin, which InDesign really likes, it turns into that white triangle. So if I want to have a perfect margin to margin text box, I'm going to click, drag, and drop from the margins. This allows me to create a text box which I can then center and align along the center. But let's go ahead and type within this document. In this case, I'm creating a poster for the OCMC 2015 competition. So I'm going to go ahead and create my first text box. And in this case, I'm going to create a heading. So I'm going to go ahead and type in OCMC, and I'm going to type in 2015. Now, I've created a text box, and this type is much too small, and this text box frame seems very big. I can change this any number of ways. I can highlight my text, and I can go up here and change the font, and I can change the font size. Let's go ahead and take a look at this a little bit closer up. I'm going to go ahead and click on my zoom tool, which works the same in InDesign as it does in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom up close to my title. First thing I notice when I'm looking at this title is it's the wrong font. My client has requested fonts that are within the sans serif family, and so I need to change this. So I can click on the type tool, I can highlight that area, and I can change it. Now here's a really nice thing about InDesign. When I just hover over, what happens is when I now click my up and down arrows, it's going to actually change the font, so I can sample a number of fonts to see what they look like. Now the client hasn't given us a specific font to use, only that we would like to have something that is a sans serif font. In this case, I'm just going to choose Impact, which is a really simple, nice bold font. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Impact, and now I have a sans serif font. I can now go in and change the font size. But I'm going to do this a different way. So I'm going to click on Control minus to zoom out a bit, and so I can see the upper portion of my document. I can also see that I have transform controls. If you're not seeing transform controls around your text box, go ahead and click on the top left tool, which is your selection tool. This is the black arrow with a white outline. Now when you see your transform controls, what you want to do is you want to double click on the bottom right of this transform control, not the larger box, but the one just beneath it. When I double click, this is going to bump my transform controls up right against the content within the text box. This allows me to do a number of things. First thing I can do is I can resize this text box. If I want to return it to a larger text box, all I need to do is go into a transform control and resize. But that did not resize the content of that text frame. So just going to Control Z or Command Z to undo what I just did. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to resize the contents. To resize the contents, I hold the Control key. When I hold the Control key and click from a transform control and enlarge, it's going to enlarge the contents and make the contents fit the size of the text box that I've just created. Now, I didn't maintain aspect ratio. You'll notice that as I was resizing, it didn't maintain the width and the height together. If I want InDesign to do that, I'm just going to Control Z to undo that. All I need to do is hit Control and Shift. So now I can resize and maintain the aspect ratio. So you'll notice that no matter where I'm going with my cursor, InDesign does not allow me to skew or distort the contents of the box. So to resize, it's Control. To resize and maintain aspect ratio, it's Control and Shift. If I want to resize this further, I'm going to Control and Shift again, move my cursor, and I'm going to change the size even bigger. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit and show you what else you can do with this. In this particular case, I can turn around and I can rotate this. Just like before in Photoshop, you'll notice that my cursor goes from a black arrow to the double-ended arrow to the bendy. And when I use the bendy and I click and drag up and down, you'll notice that there's a little dialog box that tells me the angle that my text box is turning. If I want to set that at a specific angle, I could actually go up here into my options toolbar. You'll notice that I stopped at 56.25. If I wanted this to be exactly 90 degrees, I could just punch in 90 degrees, hit enter. I now have a 90-degree text box which I can place however I like. I could also, again, click Control and Shift to maintain aspect ratio and to resize it so that it's right up against both sides of my frame if I like. And if I want to resize without maintaining aspect ratio, if I want to just stretch it a little bit, I could do that too as long as I hold just the Control key. So now I've created a really bold, really big title. That doesn't necessarily have to be the way that you design your poster. This is simply an outline on what you can do with the different types of type frames. I'm going to create another type frame. This time, instead of typing directly into that frame, I'm going to create a frame that's tied to a Word document that's already existing on my computer. This is particularly useful if you have documents with a lot of text. For a poster, it's not really useful because you only have a little bit of information. But I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to click back on the Type tool, and I'm going to click, drag, and drop a text frame. In this case, I don't really like the size of this. I'm going to resize it. And I think I'd like to click, drag, and drop some rulers or some guidelines. You can click, drag, and drop some guidelines by clicking within an existing ruler, just like in Photoshop, and clicking and dragging and dropping it. I could do the same from up here. Click, drag, and drop. Now when I click within my object, I can click, and my rulers really do like those text boxes, so everything kind of snaps too. If you're not seeing rulers, you can turn those on by going on to View and click on Show Rulers. If you want them to go away, you click on Hide Rulers. So in my case, I already have them on. I'm going to hide the rulers to show you. View, Show Rulers. Okay? Now I'm ready to place a document within here, and I want to demonstrate how to do that with an existing Word file. So I'm going to go up here to File, and I'm going to click on Place. In this case, I just want to demonstrate how you can place contents from an existing Word document within this poster. I'm going to go ahead and click on the design document that's provided from the customer. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and click on Open. This is actually going to open the contents of that Word document in here. But you'll notice that I received an Adobe Typekit dialog box saying that I have missing fonts. What this is doing is it's telling me that there are no matches found on Typekit for the font that would be close to replacing the existing one in this document. Adobe would like to know if I would like to find the font or if I'd like to close this tool and try to use a font of my own. I'm going to click Close because I know that I want to select a font of my own anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and close the document, and now I have contents from this Word file in this little type frame here. Now this is the contents of the actual document from the client. If I were to click and extend this box, you'll notice that there's more information here. If I were to continue clicking and opening this box, you'll notice that there's more and more and more content. If I were to decrease the size, the content doesn't really go away. What InDesign does is it tells you that this box is overset. And I know that this box is overset because I have this red plus sign in the bottom right-hand corner of this text frame. This text frame and this overset box tells me there's more information than what is showing up within the frame. I can address this issue a couple of different ways. If I wanted the entire contents and I wanted to play around with them, all I need to do is double click on the bottom transform control, and if I double click, it's going to expand the text box to include all of the contents that I'm working with. That's not really what I want to do, so I'm going to do Control Z to undo that. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to have this text box run into another text box and another text box. So let's say I want to create this text box and 2 columns of type here. I'm going to go back to my type tool. I'm going to click, drag, and drop, and I'm going to create a column of text right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my selection tool. I'm going to click on the red plus, which is my overset icon. And you'll notice that when I did that, my cursor changed. My cursor includes now a little bit of a paragraph beneath it. Now what I want to tell InDesign is I want to tell InDesign to continue the text from here to here. And when I click within this text box, the content moves from this text box to this text box. I can continue doing this because I can see here at the bottom of this corner, let me just decrease this box in size here so you can see it better. There's a red plus again. This means, once again, that this text is overset. In other words, there's more content than what's in this box. I'm going to go back up to my text frame or my type tool, and I'm going to click, drag, and drop another box. Now watch what happens when I'm click, dragging, and dropping another box. InDesign knows that I really like to have documents that have similar borders or where things are nicely lined up. So when things are nicely lined up, InDesign highlights those lines in green. You'll notice that when it wasn't lined up, it's blue, and as I push against the borders, it turns green. And now I want to tell InDesign to move the text that's overset from this box to this box. So I go back up to my selection tool, click on the red plus, and click within this new dialog text box, this new text box. I now have text that runs from this box to this box to this box. Now that may not be what you're trying to achieve, but it's just a demonstration of how easy it is to have text run from one text box to another from an existing Word document. Let's go ahead and take some of the content out of these existing boxes. So I have content, but clearly I don't want to include the instructions from the customer. I just want to have the content and the contact information. So I'm going to go up here to my type tool, and I'm going to highlight the content that I want to delete. So I'm going to go all the way up to content, and I'm going to click delete. I'm done with these text boxes and for this demonstration, so I'm just going to delete those. All right, so now I'm ready to start thinking about what kind of images I'm going to place in this poster. In the next video, we're going to talk about how to create graphic frames.